The lab door hissed shut, a sister's sacrifice. Corporation's Ada's grappling silence and never cage. Albert's syringe glints in the dark eye's betrayal forged in serum and steel during the mansion's collapse. Ada's grappling hook vanishes into night, leaving her to the cold. Alex Wesker vanishes into night, was escaped leaving her to the rogue cold agent. It was buried with her. Forged in what if the serum and woman steal during the mansion's raccoon's collapsed canals was never the villain. Alex vanishes into night. Wesker, her to the cold Albert's twin, was no rogue agent, she was a vessel. An experiment woven from progenitor DNA, designed to bind the virus chaos. Umbrella's final gambit, a human ark, her body a prison for primordial rot, but containment failed. Not in her flesh but in the corporation's silence, her death was not an end, it was a seal, a lie poured into water. What legacy remains when a sister's sacrifice is erased? The canals whisper, the virus sleeps, and the question lingers who truly drowned that night, 119. The stairway of the sun bloomed in Congo's fevered heart. Its petals, violet as poisoned dusk, exuded sap Umbrella harvested in secret. From this nectar the progenitor was brewed a virus that did not corrupt but commanded. Alex Wesker's veins were its first sanctuary. Twin to Albert yet opposite in purpose, he was the architect, she the ark. Umbrella's files label her subject 002, a living lattice for the virus they could not contain. The STARS recruitment was no coincidence, it was a performance. Albert moved pieces on a board of lies. Alex was the queen he never intended to lose. In the labs beneath Raccoon, their genetic bond was weaponized. Alex's blood coagulated the progenitor's chaos, a paradox of infection and immunity. She wore her sisterhood like a straitjacket, her eyes hollowed by serums that made her a vault. The canals of Dingo's Beach mirrored the sterile tanks of her childhood waiter as both womb and tomb. When she fell, the corporation's silence was airtight, no obituary. No memorial, just a protocol, purge the data, incinerate the remains, let the world believe she drowned in her brother's betrayal. But the virus sleeps. In the marrow of forgotten archives, in the hum of a flower no longer blooming, in the cold calculus of a twin who became more than human. What does it mean that Alex's death was erased, that her sacrifice was not an end but a containment? The canals whisper, the virus sleeps. And somewhere a key turns. The mansion incident birthed a monster. Albert Wesker's trembling hand pierced his skin. A vial of progenitor seeped into his veins, his cells rebelled, his soul unmade. While the world watched Albert rise, another experiment bled in silence. Alex Wesker, twin to the traitor, lay bound in Arclay's deepest lab. Umbrella's finest called it containment. A living vault, her blood drank the progenitor, not to mutate, to absorb. They believed the virus could be tamed, that Alex's genetics could cradle its chaos. For months she burned, flesh against paradox. Her screams were classified, her pain data. Albert's transformation was a footnote, Alex's suffering was the thesis. The progenitor, mother of all horrors, writhed inside her. Yet Alex endured, her body a cage, her mind a dam. Umbrella's directors whispered, this is control. They did not understand, the virus did not submit, it waited. When the mansion fell, when Albert donned his new skin, Alex was buried alive, not in soil. In secrecy, her death certificate, a myth, her legacy, a redacted file. Umbrella could not risk what she held, could not admit their weapon was a tomb. The canals of Raccoon City carried more than sewage, they carried the weight of a sister's silence. Alex's final breath sealed the progenitor's prison, or so they thought. What if the virus did not sleep? What if it merely chose its next host? The key still turns. Steel of the what if it containment merely unit chose its next host, pressed into her palms. A sterile tang of antiseptic filled the air. Her pulse echoed in the hollow thud of a biometric lock. Umbrella's Ouroboros project did not seek to weaponize the progenitor, it sought to unmake humanity. Albert's thesis was clear, only the virus could refine the species, only the virus could evolve. Alex's genetic code was not a prison, it was a keystone. Designed to bind the progenitor's chaos, her DNA wove a lattice of suppression, but suppression is not containment. The virus does not sleep, it waits. They called her a failed experiment, a footnote in Albert's shadow, but the data tells another story. Her blood work shows a slow, deliberate integration. The progenitor's mutations did not rage, they harmonized, a symphony of controlled anarchy. Umbrella's scientists watched in awe as her cells became both host and gatekeeper. Yet harmony is a fragile thing. The Ouroboros agenda demanded a sacrifice. Albert's evolution required a purge. Alex's choice was the final variable. Would she let the virus consume her, becoming a template for the new order, or would she shatter the chain, ensuring the old world's survival? She chose the template. Her final hours were not screams, they were silence. A silence so absolute it drowned the hum of life support. Umbrella's board met her death with clinical detachment. No eulogies, no memorials, just a redacted file and a sterilized lab. The virus did not leave her. It passed into the walls, the air, the very steel that bound her. Albert's Ouroboros thesis was incomplete. Evolution is not culling, it is choice, Alex's choice. Her agency, tragic and resolute, became the weapon Umbrella feared most. A truth buried beneath corporate ash, and still, the key turns. What remained when Frost sealed her fate? A progenitor core, stabilized by her will. Umbrella's research hinged on containment. Alex was not a Failuresh, was the vault. They feared what she held, a blueprint to master the virus. Her corpse, frozen in silence, became a tomb for their final secret. What did they bury there? A cure, a weapon, or the truth that shattered them? The island's silence was not peace. Beneath its snow lay a name Umbrella erased, Alex Wesker, not a failure, a vessel. Her body a vault for Progenitor's final strain of virus, too dangerous to release, too valuable to destroy. They let the storm swallow her, let the ice seal her. A sister's scream became a footnote. Albert's grief, a dead man's burden. What does a corporation mourn when its god is a corpse? Umbrella did not weep. They burned records, rebranded labs, turned her sacrifice into a cipher. The progenitor lived on in vials, in code, in the hollow eyes of those who knew. Alex's death was not an end, it was a threshold, a price paid in blood to keep the world blind. How many more had to die for that lie? How many more would? The snow still falls, the island still breathes. And in its heart a twin's shadow waits, proof that some secrets cannot be buried, only rented, only borrowed, until the cost is due. Alex Wesker was not born, she was assembled. A lattice of DNA spliced with progenitor, each strand a chain in Umbrella's grand design. Albert's sister was never meant to live, only to contain. The Ouroboros thesis whispered of evolution unshackled, but Alex was its prison. Her cells, a war zone, flesh against virus. Every breath a battle, did they feel it, the tendrils gnawing, rewriting her from within. Her body a canvas for horrors, skin splitting, organs reshaping, a living sarcophagus. When the experiments failed, Umbrella did not mourn, they erased. Her death was a footnote, a silent purge, but the progenitor waits. In her shadow, in every failed experiment, the virus breathes. What if control is an illusion? What if containment is the first bite? The Ouroboros dream lives. And so does the horror. Steel chambers hum beneath the Arctic. Frost clings to Alex Wesker's skin. Her breath does not rise. The progenitor's suppression code sleeps in her veins, coiled, waiting. Umbrella's vaults still pulse with her genetic cipher, a key to lock what they could never kill. In 2002, the corporation birthed its first shadow, an anti-Umbrella front designed to deflect blame. Alex's frozen body was its silent architect, her death, a hollow footnote. The world was never meant to mourn her, only forget. Machinery whispers, liquid nitrogen hisses, her flesh remains pristine, a relic of containment. Umbrella's modern bioweapons still whisper her name in their blueprints. The code in her blood could chain the progenitor's rager, unleash it, a toggle between salvation and extinction. They built her as a vault, now they guard the vault, but ice cracks. The suppression code's limits are known only to the dead. What if her stillness is not victory? What if it is the progenitor's breath held? The Arctic wind howls. Beneath it a deeper silence, the body that dreams in frost, the virus that sleeps in a sister's blood, the lie that Umbrella lives, and the truth that waits to thaw. The lab hums, a sterile cold clings to Alex Wesker's skin. Her veins carry progenitor, not poison. Umbrella's architects called it containment, they called her a vault. Across the glass, Albert's flesh rots, his Ouroboros burns, a serpent eating its own tail, no balance, no design, just hunger. Alex's experiments ended with a needle. Albert's ended with a scream, one body preserved in frost, the other left to fester in the sun. Spencer's plot unraveled when Albert fell. But Alex's story did not. She walked beyond the ruins of Raccoon, beyond the ash of Rockfort. A ghost with a virus in her blood and a brother's legacy in her bones. Umbrella's files whisper of her, code names like Echo and Crimson Queen. They feared what she carried, feared what they could not unmake. Her death came in the shadows of a forgotten island, a blade, a fall. A silence so complete it was as if she had never existed. No obituary, no memorial, just a cleanup crew and a virus left to sleep. Albert's fate was public theater, a villain's end. Alex's was erasure, a final edit in the corporate ledger. The progenitor never slept, it only waited. In her blood, in his flesh, in the rot of every failed dream. Control is an illusion. Umbrella learned this too late. They built their empire on a virus that could not be tamed. Alex was their last hope and their final proof, a sister who became a vessel. A weapon who became a wound. The truth does not thaw, it bleeds, and the ice never forgets. The cold of Alex Wesker's containment chamber still clings to the rusted walls of Umbrella's abandoned labs. Her blood, once a river of progenitor, now stains frozen records beneath layers of ash and silence. They called her a vector, not a weapon, though her veins carried the very code they sought to weaponize. Albert's twin did not burn like a failed experiment. She simmered, a quiet supernova, her genetic lattice cradling the virus's raw, unmutated core. You think Umbrella fell because of T-virus? No. They collapsed under the weight of what they buried in her. The progenitor, coiled in her DNA, was never meant to ravage, it was meant to rebuild. But when Alex's body failed, when her heart gave out under the strain of holding back evolution, they did not mourn. They incinerated the evidence. Paper records, flesh, and the truth. Albert's later creed, humanity is a decease, was not a revelation. It was a eulogy for her, for the perfect vessel they shattered. The virus they stole from her now rots in their ruins, a parasite without its host. But parasites forget nothing. In the shadows of Raccoon's ashes, in the hollows of Spencer's manor, the progenitor whispers. It remembers the sister who contained it, the sister who understood it. And the corporation that killed her. Evolution is the cure, but what evolves when the disease still bears the face of its jailer? Beneath the lab's sterile glare, Alex Wesker's frozen corpse guards a truth umbrella buried deeper than her twin's ambitions. Her vitals flatlined, yet her code hums with progenitor suppression, a containment vessel never meant to fail. They harvested her silence, erased her name, but the virus still bears her blueprint. What evolves when the cure outlives its